Right, so we're going to go through some of the popular pairs here and just leaning on the US dollar as a backdrop. And what's important to note is that so far, the US dollar, as measured in the DXY index, has not broken yesterday's low nor the high, right? And it is coiling and potentially setting up for a parabolic move. So, what we need to identify, if that parabolic move either occurs to the downside or the upside, we want to be prepared for what um, setups or opportunities there could come from such a scenario across the board in the indexes, gold, and the currencies. So that's what we're getting prepared for. We've got data on the calendar well, we've got that now ticking down in less than an hour. I'd been inclined to just let the data come out and see how the market reacts to it, and then if there are any setups that we can lean against after the data has been released, and giving some time to allow for the data to really play out, let the volatility settle to the point that you're not getting whipsawed, and try and get aligned with the real move, whether it's going to be north or south. So the first thing I'm going to look for, it's Wednesday, day 3 of the week. I'm going to look for to see whether we got any first red days or first green days, signal days. I'm looking for signal days. So I'm just going to have a quick scout. So looking here, we got a first red day in dollar Swiss. So we had a scenario where it'd been pumping up for some time. It's crash landed, giving us that first red day signal day. And the price is currently staying below the closing price. It's also broken the low of yesterday. So we are good to go with this, and we'll be looking for a continuation trade well below the closing price. Or if the dollar were to bounce back, then we're going to be looking to see if we can catch a move to the upside. But ideally, we would be looking for the continuation trade. We've got the same here with dollar yen. Now, dollar yen, however, has not broken the low so far. It is an inside day still. It's coiling, potentially setting up for a parabolic move one way or the other. There's the closing price, and it is testing below it. So we've dropped in London, but we haven't come down to the low of the day yet, of yesterday. So we're waiting for this data to see if we can make way for that and ride lower towards last week's lows, or whether or not this is just going to stack up on top of the closing price and revert back towards where we came from, the origin of that move. But I'm going to have this as a continuation trade possibility for the day ahead. Now we have a first green day for the New Zealand dollar. So we've rallied strongly away from last week's lows. We've closed at last week's highs, and we've stacked up above last week's highs, above the closing price, and perhaps we have prospects of a continuation trade to the upside. So we're looking for the prospects of a move lower into London longs, and potentially trading off of the low of London, the high of uh, Tuesday. That would be ideal. The closing price, any one of these levels, really. We want to see the price stalling and that's where we can catch the parabolic move to the upside if that were to come off. So we haven't got long before this needs to come into where we want it to be, potentially driven by well, more than likely by the US data, but we'll see what happens. And we have the same scenario for the Aussie dollar. Um, it's above the closing price, so we want to see that coming down into our potential supporting area for the continuation. Now, having said all this, I just want to interrupt the analysis. Having said all of this, that is not to say that the only way is up, right? We could quite easily have an opportunity to short if we can uh, get the signals. So at the moment, for instance, with the dollar, this could be the high of the day. This could be the high of the day, and we might get a trade on the backside of this bullish trend. So coming in, breaking back below the closing price and structure, and pushing back up to come down. So just keep that in mind as well. Um, Essentially, a first green day would result in a continuation of that move, but in this case, we are at last week's highs, and where is it that we're trying to get to? I mean, are we targeting money on the left? So we need to come all the way out to the weekly chart for that. So we'll be looking for a move up into this sort of area here, I'd expect. So just bear that in mind, that we are in potential resistance. So trying to buy at resistance is not always the best game plan, but it does seem as though there is momentum in this market to push up on that weekly chart. But just bear that in mind. So, plan B would be to short, as I explained. Now, this is oil, which can be a mover later in the day, but that's not to say we won't have anything in the near term. But it is a first red day, so we potentially made a peak formation for the week, and we are dropping below the low of yesterday, making room for prospects of a continuation. So you've got the closing price there. So a nice setup would be, for instance, to short from that closing price, targeting a measured move to the downside, asymmetrical risk to reward, looking left, looking at areas of potential demand, such as here. So you've got that M formation, so perhaps this is looking quite nice. Pump up to come down. That would be textbook. And then below that area, you have a peak formation that was made in the London session on Monday. So that is a first red day signal day. Right, so we have a first red day for dollar CAD. We've pumped up, we've dropped. We're looking for a continuation below the closing price. Right, so that concludes the analysis for our signal days. So we've got oil and dollar CAD on the radar. And we've got New Zealand and Aussie on the radar with dollar yen and dollar Swiss on the radar as well. And we have now 40 minutes until the data. So sitting on hands until we see that come out. I am, however, keeping a close eye on oil because that is a volatile instrument and we might be able to catch something before the data, bringing us into profit, into a break-even scenario even. We've still got 40 minutes, so just keep an eye on that and see if it doesn't come up to that closing price.